All right. Well, let's get started. We are very excited to see such a great turnout. This is actually the full session on the next version of Ops Manager, which we call Ops Manager vNext, sometimes Ops Manager 10. You'll see in the console we'll call it Ops Manager 2012, and we'll talk about the dates. My name is Vlad Jovanovic. I'm joined here by Justin Incarnato. We're program managers on the product team. And we're going to spend the next hour talking about the investments we're making in the next version of our product and how you can leverage that product to monitor your infrastructure and your applications. Now, sort of a disclaimer on the front. Anytime we're talking about next version of the product, there's definitely going to be something that we show today that won't make it in the final release. Maybe something we exactly show, maybe something we talk about. Hopefully that's based on your feedback and feedback that we learned through our TAP customers and our beta. But just that's the subject, that's the disclaimer. And also, if any demo works, there's, obviously we're going to be showing as early bits as possible. All demos have backups of screenshots and other things if something goes wrong there. So as we plan any new product, we sit down with a lot of customers and try to understand, what do you guys want? What are the investments we need to make? What are the ways that we can really empower you as the administrators of Operations Manager so you can take all of that great information from the management packs, from the console, and really solve the problems that your organizations are facing. And before I dive into some of these things, I'd like to understand who's here today. How many people have an Ops Manager deployment today in their company? Very, very fair number of you. Now let me out all the people that don't. How many people aren't using Ops Manager? All right, so now you know who you've got to talk to so we can help fix that. I'd love to know who you're using right now and sort of what other competitor data we can learn about that and how we can hopefully help you understand what Ops Manager brings to the table. For the people that do have Ops Manager installed in their environment, I'd love to understand what persona or what how do you consume Ops Manager? What's your role in the Ops Manager play? How many people are the owner of the Ops Manager infrastructure, meaning they have administration access, they're responsible for the architecture, the topology, the database, the root management server, gateways, ACS, all these different pieces. How many people fill into that bucket? So that's maybe about a third of the original number. How many people fit into another bucket where you're really sort of the owner of a particular service or a particular application? Sometimes we call this the service owner, you would have heard it. So you own Exchange, or you own Active Directory, or you own SQL. How many people are sort of those types of administrators in here? A handful of those. And then how many people are really the people that are solving the problems, that are looking at the alerts, maybe sort of anywhere from Tier 1 to Tier 4, don't have administration access, you're looking at alerts, using the web console, solving problems, running tasks. How many people fit into that model? Great. So there's a lot of people that we didn't put up their hands across those three questions. Love to understand sort of what your roles are and sort of what you do. We've got a lot of time at the booth later this week, and you can catch us after to understand so that we understand what you do with a product and how you experience the different user interfaces and the different features so we can think about the ways to improve them. Clearly, as we go from version to version to version, we're trying to reduce the time until you get value of the product. From the initial deployment of the servers, of the infrastructure, until you get that value, until you find those problems, until you can fix those issues that have happened in your environment through the management packs, through the infrastructure, trying to reduce that, lower that total cost of ownership, not of just initial deployment, but also of the maintenance of the Operations Manager product itself. Right? If it's complicated to manage and monitor itself, it's kind of a double negative. It's not really helping you monitor the other workloads which are critical for your company. The other area that we see that's changing over time is the importance of the application. And it's going to be an interesting transition as we get to monitor more and more of this application. We really see we're solving the problem sort of from the inside out, really, if you think about it, understanding the health of the infrastructure. The core Windows OS, core cross-platforms, Linux and Unix, and then moving out to the sort of core infrastructure pieces like DHCP, DNS, SQL, BizTalk, IS, and then slowly moving to the application. And really solving the inside out really gives you the health and the detail of the infrastructure underneath so that you can really tell what that application experience and what that application health is from that entire area. So that's what we're going to be prioritizing higher as we try to get visibility into that application health. And obviously you've heard about the Avocode acquisition and the application focus that gives us, and the other things that we'll be doing there. The other things are around simplicity, trying to make it easy to use Operations Manager so you don't have to train your users, train your operators, train new administrators. Clearly, if you're going to bring Operations Manager into a company and spread it across the organization, it can't be just one person that has administration access or authoring access. You'll be that single bottleneck across the organization. We've got to enable it so that you can delegate the right roles, so that you can delegate the right permissions to people so that they can make it work for operations for their goals, whether it's overrides or whether it's deploying agents or whether it's creating groups or other things like that. Clearly, it needs to be reliable. We need to continue making sure that the software is there and working. If it's a problem as well, you can't find other problems. We want you to be able to personalize it, so different personas that we talked about, these different users, can see the information that they need to solve the problems, and also clearly make it consistent across all the different workloads, across all the different data that could show up in Operations Manager, whether it's data coming from hardware management packs, right to application management packs, or even network devices. And one of the coolest management packs that I just heard a few weeks ago, built by a partner, that can install something in a rack and automatically smell if there's smoke coming in that data center, and can send an SNMP trap to Ops Manager to let you know that there's smoke in your data center. And that's the second one to the coffee management pack, if you've ever heard about that one. It's a very classic management pack. So the way we're going to break up the session is really sort of into three areas. Justin's going to talk about the holistic view of application health, the way we're breaking that down, the different personas that are consuming this information, how we're really trying to look at the entire application, both from the inside out and the outside in, all these different pieces. I'm going to talk a bit more about the way we're trying to reduce TCO, some pretty exciting things to talk about there that hopefully you'll find exciting. We'll talk about the ways that we're trying to decrease the value from partners, and we'll see lots of fun demos along the way. So I'll pass it over to Justin to talk about the holistic view of health.
Yeah, thanks, Vlad. It's good to see everyone out, quite a big audience. Like Vlad said, we're here to talk about some of the investments we're making in OM10, OMV4, System Center Operations Manager 2012, however you want to slice it. The specific part of the demonstration today, I'll have a few demos for you guys, but what I want to talk to you all today about is the holistic view of the application health. What does that really mean when we talk about a holistic view? Some of the things we're going to talk about, let's make it simple. Dashboards enable a 360-degree view in a single tool. What we want to be able to do is easily determine what and why. When we look at a distributed app, when we look at a dashboard, when we look at a service, if we are a service owner, if we are a CIO, if we are that end user consumer, we want to easily be able to determine what's wrong with my application. How can I determine where to start troubleshooting an application? Let's make it reliable. Information easily enables the easy reconciliation of internal monitoring with the end user experience. So what does that really mean? When we talk about our internal monitoring, as you all have used Operations Manager today, we really talk about that internal infrastructure monitoring. We want to make sure that our web servers are healthy, that our SQL boxes are healthy, right? That our directory service is clean, DNS is serving as it should. We want to take that, combine it with that end user experience monitoring. If we look at what the end user is doing, we want to make sure that the application is the first-class citizen. It's wonderful that our infrastructure is running. It's wonderful that the 10 nodes that we have in a web cluster are running as they should. If 8 of those nodes fail, are 2 of those nodes still able to serve my end users? Give me the overall health of the application as it's perceived from that end user. And when we have those transactions, can we execute those transactions internally? Can we execute those transactions externally? And what do those transactions look like? What's the health? That allows me to pinpoint the issues. Vlad talked a little bit about some of the network investments. If we have a network device sitting in front of a load-balanced group of web servers, and we get heartbeat failures because the network device has gone down, We'd rather not dispatch our web service administrators to try to troubleshoot what's wrong with the web service. Let's look at the network device. Give me the ability to pinpoint those issues. Personalized views to provide relevant information. This is driven by persona. If I'm a service owner, give me that 30,000-foot view. If I'm a consumer, if I'm a frontline, we call them the glass watchers, the folks that are actually watching the console, give me the views and the diagnostics and the tasks that I need to pinpoint where the issue is, determine where I should start, again, driven by persona. If I were to build out a scope in the console, for example, and it's just the SQL servers that I care about, that scope's going to follow me along to the web console. Consistent views across multiple interfaces. We talked about publishing these SharePoint views, or these dashboards, into SharePoint. We're going to have these views and dashboards in the web console. We're going to have them in the rich console or the thick client. Give me a window into my enterprise, right? When we have these simple, reliable, personalized, and consistent views. And when you talk to the CIO, some of the questions that CIO consumer looks at, am I meeting my agreed service levels? I've got a service level agreement that I have with my customer base. How can I determine if I'm violating those service level agreements? How can they determine if they're getting the value out of the service levels that I'm guaranteeing? How many applications are healthy, right? How many applications are not healthy? Again, going back to looking at the infrastructure, but then the application as a whole. Again, that holistic view of the application. Is health getting worse over time? Can I look at trending? Do I know that in the next 30 days, my resources will be completely gone? Are the business function being performed as expected? Do I have capacity? If you take a step back and you look at what that service owner is providing, not the consumer, not the CIO, the service owner is going to ask themselves, am I meeting my agreed service levels? Right? I said, hey, I'm going to give this application 99.9% availability. Am I delivering on that? Do I have a way to determine that today? How many applications, again, are healthy versus not healthy? What components are causing problems? Do I need to go talk to the SQL folks? Do I need to talk to the IS folks? Do I need to talk to the .NET developers? You always have that contention where the Windows guys are blaming the network guys are blaming the devs are saying, oh, it worked when I deployed it in test, right? Give that ammunition to be able to go back to those owners and say, hey, this is what's causing the problem. Here's where it's at. Here's where you need to spend your resources. Let's solve some of these problems.
And this is a good area where I think we're trying to help. Ops Manager really started on the infrastructure side. DNS, DHCP, Windows, now cross-plat. How do we help you enable those conversations with those application owners? So we've talked to customers before where a lot of times the application owner executes their own decision for the monitoring of that app. And essentially sort of sometimes just says, that's it. This app is being monitored with this new system, and now you have to use two, and you have to somehow integrate them. How can we help you enable it so that that service owner can get what they need from your platform? And not give them some common denominator approach so that they get the rich data they need without having to own and maintain their own, which will eventually have to be maintained by probably the people in this room.
Thanks, Bud. Lastly, the operator, the glass watcher. What problem do I fix first? I'm listed a few different application faults here. Which one do I tackle first? Can I determine the priority that bit by which it affects the customer? If I've got the synthetic transactions running and I know that the external transactions that are running impacting my customers directly, let's target those first. Can I pinpoint where the problem exists? Do I have that type of visibility, like Vlad said, to hone in on a specific line of code in a .NET app that you might have? Are the problems related? What are the dependencies? How many times are you able to answer the question, how many applications in your environment do you care about? What are the dependencies on those applications? What front ends talk to which back ends? What does a healthy transaction look like? And lastly, is this a recurring problem? Is this something that's occurring time after time after time? Give me a nice report on that to show me, hey, Justin, if you're able to isolate this one particular issue with a .NET app, it's going to solve 70% of your downtime. Those are the types of decisions you want to be able to make. Those are the types of issues you want to fix. And if you have the ammunition to go back to the developers, to the SQL DBAs, to the front-end web server administrators, to the load balancer folks, right, the network folks, you can make those decisions and solve those problems. So just to sum up, if we talk about the different blocks that kind of make this happen, traditional infrastructure monitoring Vlad was talking about, that I talked about originally, Traditional OS, SQL. Let's make sure the underlying infrastructure is healthy. Operations Manager, world-class, best of breed, no one does it better. Microsoft Cloud Monitoring. When you move your applications to Azure, when you have them in Azure, your management's going to ask you the next question. Can you keep track of it? Can you monitor it? Can you keep tabs on it? Can you make sure it's available? Can you make sure it's healthy? Am I meeting those service level agreements? With Operations Manager, the answer is yes. Middle tier, application components and dependencies with .NET. We touched on the AbiCode acquisition, what that means to .NET monitoring. Take it up the cross-platform stack for J2EE. The last piece, in data center, synthetic transactions. You've always been able to perform the synthetic transactions against your websites from inside your infrastructure. SharePoint, V3 administration. Maybe check your OS sites, right? Outside the data center, synthetic transactions for the mid-mile. Are these end-user experiences occurring? Are they happening? Are they able to make the transactions? Are they able to make it inside? Are they able to log onto a commerce site and add things to their cart and check out, right? Simulate that end-user experience as it is from an end user. And then the actual client monitoring, the last mile. That's the .NET piece. That's the AbiCode piece, right? Be able to have the interceptors tell us where the problems are down to a line of code in the application. And that gives us the holistic view of our health, of the application we care about. So let me quickly flip over to a quick demo.
One more.
Oops, I'm looking at yours.
Now you're all tabbing within that one. Yeah. That's you.
So what I'm going to show you guys today, with Operations Manager today, monitoring your applications in Azure is not something that's available tomorrow. It's available today. What I'll show you is a couple things. I've got a Windows Azure application. I want to take advantage of the Azure cloud. I want to get my application into Azure. I want that elasticity, right? I want the availability. So I've got an application, and there's a couple things that you need to do in order to make this happen. You'll notice with R2, CU3, we've got new module support and also an application management pack for Windows Azure. Couple things you need to plug in: the hosted service name, the subscription ID, the slot that you want to monitor. You need to create a Run As account profile that is actually has the Run As account for the certificate you want to use, which is a basic authentication Run As account. And you also need to create a binary PFX Run As account that actually binds to the actual certificate you want to use to connect to that Azure application. Once you run through that demo and you get it all set up, you can flip over to the monitoring space, and you'll see that you have the applications that you're monitoring that are in Azure. You can look at your deployment state, look at your hosted service state, you can look at your role instance state, and you can look at your role state. One of the things you can also look at, if you can see the task over on the far right, change the number of roles and instances. If I have 2 VM roles and I want to increase that number, I can run a task to make 4. If I need more, I can add 4 more. If I need to retract a few, I can retract a few as well, and dynamically add those machines in Azure as my demand sees fit. We've got a common set of performance metrics that we can look at as well: ASP.NET, disk capacity, memory, network adapter utilization, processor performance, which is the demo that I'm giving you guys today. So if we switch back over to the authoring space, one of the things we want to look at is make sure that our applications are running in Azure. If we go back to the monitoring space, we not only want to make sure that we can do those synthetic transactions that Azure is going to perform for us, but we want to make sure that we can look at the synthetic transactions from an end user perspective, right? How does that end user see? Oops, sorry, opened up the wrong one. So let's look at the distributed application that I actually have called My To-Do application. And what we have here are the end user experiences that we have that are synthetic transactions that are playing against our Azure application. So we not only have that application monitoring from Azure, we have those synthetic transactions playing against it as well. And that's it for me, Vlad.
Great.
Turn it back over to you.
Awesome. So one of the other areas that we've invested in the next version of Ops Manager is around the network. And the network investments have really been done in a way to really help you, the infrastructure owners, the application owners, really get enough information to the network so you can understand if it's a network problem or an application problem, to help you solve those problems and stop that finger pointing. From discovery, monitoring, visualization, and reporting. And let's just jump right into a demo and show you what we've got here. In the administration space is where you do all of the configuration for what you've discovered. And in this case, what we've done, if you may have heard if you attended Ryan's session earlier today, we are actually discovered the network here within the buildings, within the entire TechEd environment, which is a combination of sort of house devices or sort of devices that aren't Microsoft's. We don't have any community strings for, and then a bunch of Microsoft infrastructure that has essentially extended this network to the different conference rooms, giving us network here, network in the different areas, hands-on labs, keynote areas, all this sort of stuff. And what we did is we convinced the network team here to let us do this with our unreleased CDP2 beta, which was slightly difficult. We did this about 6 or 8 hours before the show actually opened. You can imagine that they've been setting this show up for weeks, or not weeks, probably about a week, getting everything configured, testing everything, making sure everything's working. And we talked to them beforehand. But we showed up about 6 hours. This was late Sunday night, and the show was opening Monday morning. And we said, hey, can we get that read-only, that community string so that we could discover your devices? And literally there's about 6 of them, network guys, all really serious, looking at us. What are you going to do to our network? Are you sure? And I very carefully said, we're just going to discover them. We'll slow down the polling interval, and let's just see. We'll use those 6 hours to see if you've seen any impacts before we finally discover it.
When you convince them, too, it's just the read-only strings that makes the conversation a little smoother.
Yeah, but they were really serious, and they didn't let on if they were going to do it. And I said, the customers, it's all about the customers, all about the attendees. They really like it if we were able to do this for the show. And finally, they gave us access. And literally, within a few, 15 to 20 minutes, we started seeing devices being discovered. We just brought the system, plugged it into the network, and boom, it just away it went with the community string.
And Vlad, when we talked to those guys initially, they were able to provide us with a seed device, where we were able to interrogate that primary seed device and then crawl the vicinity view of those seed devices and pick up all the network devices that were connected to it.
Yep. And just like Justin showed in the Azure experience, the different configuration was behind the scenes a run as account. Similar here. That's really one of the big changes. If you're using, how many people are monitoring the network with Ops Manager R2 today? A few people. How many people have their own network device MPs? A few of you. There's going to be some impacts to those devices working against devices that OM10 or Ops Manager vNext discovers. It discovers a different node, and the community string, as you know in our R2, is a property on that object, and you pass that property into all of your other workflows so everything just works. In the next version of Ops Manager, when this discovery wizard discovers an instance of a network device, it stores a run as account for the community string. So there's some small changes, pretty search and replace-ish, over your existing MPs to make them work. When you do an upgrade, your management packs will just work. But any new device you discover with this wizard, your old management pack won't be able to target. Hopefully that makes sense. If you need any more data, just let us know. So here's where I configured the run as account. And if you had a number of different community strings, you could enter a bunch in here, and we would try all of them. Here's some of the devices that we added as seed devices.
One of the things there, too, Vlad touched on it briefly. When you have a bunch of devices, you have a bunch of community strings, it's hard to really know which devices map to which community strings. What Operations Manager does is actually during that sonar discovery, it will try a community string with each device to determine which one actually works, and it will use that from then going forward. One of the things to keep in mind, let your network administrators know that you'll be actually iterating through several different incorrect community string passwords in order to find the one that's paired correctly to that object. They'll get some, maybe if they're using a complementary monitoring tool for their network devices, they may send you a friendly email reminder.
Couple other things you could include some filters here, exclude some, schedule the discovery so it happens all the time, and that's essentially the wizard. But we've already discovered it. And let's dive into monitoring. Let's see the data that you'll see as Ops Manager users. From a state view, we've got all of the switches that are discovered here, and I'll try to zoom in for people in the back, and I hope I don't make you seasick with this Zoom tool. You see that there's 2 devices that are in a critical state. I'm going to drill into why those are critical and what devices these are. And clearly, as the Ops Manager administration here, we all have administration access to Ops Manager. We don't know anything about the network. So we've spent a bit of time with the networking team understanding what devices what and what devices the roles that they're playing. So we'll try to tell you that as we go. The first one here, if I look at the device, you see obviously lots of properties of the device. You see lots of common state about devices, like looking at the availability and performance regardless of the manufacturer. In this case, this device is actually a network device that was behind in the keynote area. And you'll see that it changed state. I've got some work to do on knowledge there. Pretty much right after the keynote stopped, if you convert this time from Pacific to the local time here. The Ops Manager server is in Pacific time, so if that was around 10 a.m.
One of the things, too, if you guys will notice what Vlad has walked through, the discovery for discovering devices, the same UI experience you have today with discovering Windows servers or non-Windows servers. The Health Explorer, the different alert views, the different ways we can pivot around an Operations Manager, irrespective of being specific to the network devices, that common UI experience.
And then this other device, apparently this is one of the main switches that really connect the show network with the Microsoft infrastructure network. And this device, apparently all traffic is going through this device. And if you look at it from a Health Explorer perspective, it had a performance problem there. I think I've got some cache issue here.
We probably took a remediation and fixed it.
This device before had a CPU problem. No, I'm getting the other one. What I can do is I'm going to drill into the network dashboard for this particular device, and this device is got some different connections to it. Actually, let me look at. Let's let it finish thinking. So the CPU was really high on this device. It was at 93% the last time we looked, and it's because it's just really busy. All of the data is going through here, and we wanted to get to the performance view so that you could see how we've automatically defaulted which ports and which things we're monitoring on these network devices. We don't just discover, we do discover all the ports and all the interfaces, but we don't monitor them all by default. There's specific ones that we enable based on, come back here, no.
Yeah.
There's specific ones that we enable based on what is connected to what. So on this particular device, this 82.144, we're monitoring port 2 and port 25.
That's ready.
And I was going to jump into port 25 here so that we could, here we go.
And any of the ports that you have administratively disabled, we'll disregard those, just like we do Windows services that you have set to disabled.
And here's an instance of one of these new dashboard views that we've been talking about. A dashboard view that isn't just a state view. It really combines a bunch of rich information, information from the instance, objects that this instance hosts, like the interfaces. And here you see a bunch aren't being monitored. And the ones that we are monitoring, like this port 25, you can see it has a particular health. And I could right-click on these objects. Actually, I can't right-click, but I can go to Performance View, and I can see all the performance data that's collected for that particular instance, and then graph that data like the particular utilization. So, you know, it's only Tuesday of the event. We got some data yesterday and Monday as this device was being used and got discovered. Then everyone went to sleep right after the keynote, and then we all came back, and you could start to see spikes in between breaks and sessions, and sort of everyone goes to check their email and comes back from lunch. That's the type of data we're getting in the network piece. The other piece that's important to point out is how it's connected to the Windows servers. Right? This isn't going to replace the tools that your network users are using today. Network admins have their own tools, have their own configuration tools. And one of the important pieces is to understand how these different devices are connected to your Windows servers. And in this case, I can see from a particular state view how this device, how this particular computer is connected to the different network devices in my area, in my view. And if one of these connections are down, or if the device was unhealthy, I could see visually how these objects are correlated. And maybe it is a problem on the server seeing a problem because the network device is seeing a problem, or there's some problem with the device it's connected to. Or there's a problem between the connection. Both are healthy, but the connection between the two isn't healthy.
And Vlad, that was one of the things we had talked about, the server to switch fabric. Give me that, in order to get the holistic view of your application health, if you can deliver via the console a view into how your network devices are connected to your Windows servers, that really drives the health of your application, specifically when you're looking at the distributed app in a view or in a model.
And in this case, I chose the view to show the computers that are connected to this device. And in this case, we're actually only monitoring 3 servers, which are the servers that we really brought, a set of images that have Ops Manager, the data warehouse, and the R2, some other R2 instance, and the Ops Manager server itself. They're all connected to this one device, and you can see sort of the one hop-out view to really help you get that information as to how it impacts your Windows server, so that you can have a better conversation with that network team, hopefully enabling you to solve those problems as they happen today in your sort of physical world, but also as you move to sort of the private cloud world, as you try to get sort of dynamic resources. We're seeing customers need to do things in different ways. And we see customers sort of really siloed with the networking team and the storage team and the Windows team and the cross-platform team. And what seems to be breaking down the walls between these teams and making managers sort of really realize we've got to do things in different ways and more agile ways is as we try to deploy these private clouds where resources come and go just too fast to sort of really organize it all by getting in a room and sort of meeting. And we see customers really trying to do things differently as they move to sort of more elastic resources like the private cloud. So is there anything else on the network stuff that we want to show, Justin? Administration, switches, keynote, port stitching. Oh yeah, the one other thing, actually 2 other things. We wanted to look at the network summary view. This is a view that can show you the health of all of your network, sort of all up. Sort of a view that shows you all your devices, sort of interfaces with the highest CPU, highest utilization, sort of a CPU usage graph that shows you kind of the little bar there, gives you a visual, sort of a rich visual experience of the data that's collected by the network management pack across the MPs. And the final thing, this refresh behind me, is basically the same view but from a web console.
You notice the new web console over Silverlight.
And these dashboards could be hosted in SharePoint, so you can start sharing them with your managers and your CIOs to hopefully help them understand what it is that Ops Manager is doing. How is Ops Manager improving your environment, and sort of what can they do to kind of show other people that the investment's paying off, and look at sort of the value we're getting out here. And definitely there's lots of performance work that we need to do here to make this faster. Because I talked a lot there. And it still didn't load.
Keep going.
I could continue talking.
There it is.
So there it loads. So personalization is tracked. So if I changed my personalization in one console, it follows me to the web console. So some great features. There's great sort of investments that we've made to get you that.
One of the things we looked at, too, is when we look at the rich monitoring of these network devices, it's not limited to just the performance views. We've got HSRP groups, VLAN memberships, different ways to look at the data based on which devices that you're monitoring.
Okay, so switching back to slides. We wanted to talk about the ways that we're reducing your total cost of ownership. And I think the big thing here to mention is that it's not an upgrade or it's not a migration like 2005 was to Ops Manager 2007. This is an in-place upgrade. This is a more seamless experience. We're taking your investments that you've made around management packs. We're really trying to make things just work so that you can take your environment from Ops Manager R2, CU3, and bring those forward to Ops Manager 10. If you've written PowerShell or SDK, there's some small scenarios that won't work if you're trying to update management packs based on some schema that we've changed. But if you're just getting alerts or getting events or getting performance data or even inserting objects, those should just work. Your management pack should just work. So as you test the beta and other versions that we share, if a management pack ever doesn't work, that's something that we need to know about. We're definitely designing it so that your templates, your distributed applications, your watcher nodes, all of that configuration you've put into the product carries forward so your investments preserved. And then we talked about SDK, and then also some improvements around the way that we're monitoring the Unix and Linux machines, around supporting sudo, some improved templates so that you can run some commands, really get you the sort of common scenarios that we want. And I think one of the most exciting things here is that we've got a new topology where you don't have a root management server anymore. And don't be afraid to clap. It's definitely something. Thank you. It's definitely something that we've heard a lot around the challenges of clustering in the single point of failure, and we're back to sort of a set of management servers. We do have a separate config database. If you do have a really large environment with a huge config space, you could have a separate database. It's optional. So that you have a set of management servers. The SDK service runs on all of them. So you could have your consoles going to one and have your devices monitored for another one. Right? The Azure MP requires one server to sort of act as a proxy, just like the network monitoring scenarios. So that work could run on one dedicated machine. The agents could talk to another. You could have a gateway talking to another. And we have a really exciting feature where obviously the same failover stuff will work as we have today if one management server goes down. But the big improvement that we have is this concept of a pool. Because today, if I tell all of the Azure workflows or all of the network workflows to run on one server, if that server fails, those workflows don't automatically fail over anywhere else. So now you can associate these workflows to this concept of a pool, and you can pool servers together so that those resources run on a particular pool, and then the sort of concept of the pool sort of manages who manages what. And anything you've targeted today to the root management server would target this pool of management servers, or the default pool of management servers. And this isn't just a pool of management servers. You could also use it on the agent side. So for those watcher node transactions, or a lot of partner management packs that use the concept of proxies to get to VMware data. A lot of partners have proxies that run workflows to get to ESX or get to that data. Those could run now in a pool, an operations manager, vNext, and you have that redundancy there. So if a pool member fails, everything would just be fine. Another area that we've invested in is around the monitoring of J2E web infrastructure application servers. Is anybody have any J2E servers that they need to monitor? few of you. So to sort of complement some of the investment we've making on the .NET side, we're also making investments to be able to monitor the infrastructure and the applications that are hosted within these J2E servers. And this is another area that we can demo in the early version of the product. What I have here is a node where all the Java enterprise servers would show up. Right now we've got a JBoss server that's being discovered and monitored. I can see that under configuration here. All the information about that Java server, all the configuration options, all the different parameters are collected so that they're made available, and really in a standardized way. So you don't have to know from the Ops Manager side, you don't have to know all the fine details between Tomcat and between JBoss and between WebSphere. Sort of tried to standardize that, try to give you a standard view into health and configuration across these servers. There's also configuration view for Tomcat. We can go and look at the Health Explorer for this particular object, and you can see all the different pieces of state that could impact this particular Tomcat server. These are things that are discovered by the default management pack. Those are the different applications that the Tomcat server is hosting. We can also look at a separate view of applications here. These are all the applications that are discovered. You can look at a diagram view for one of these applications to see all the components that make up that application. And you'll notice the components aren't monitored by default, and you'll be able to enable which one of these components you want to monitor. And all of the performance information is also made available, and we can get to it by going from configurations and then switching to the performance view, so that you can see information about the garbage collection on a particular server, or different memory, or different pieces of data. These workflows run locally on those J2E servers, and we're supporting Windows in this first release, and we'll be working on the Linux and Unix versions as we go. Switching back to slides. Now, switching back to slides, we're working on essentially the ways that partners can add value to your product. There's lots of different ways that partners add value today through great management packs, great connectors, to really make the product work in your environment. Whether it's monitoring the hardware, whether it's monitoring your virtualization layers like ESX or Hyper-V, or monitoring other devices. Some customers have asked for monitoring ability for temperature or humidity or other environment sensors within a room. This is where we're trying to make it even better for partners to give you those experiences, just like we've done with the Azure Management Pack, just like what we've done with the network scenarios. How can partners build management packs and build experiences around Ops Manager that give you that rich information? And really so that you can convince those service owners that they have the right data and the best solution to monitor those platforms. So that they have the rich dashboards, so they have the rich templates to configure it, so that all of that is common. Right now, one of the most challenging things when you're building a management pack today is how do you get some user input from the user? I want to build a management pack like the Azure Management Pack or the Network Management Pack. Today, it's kind of hard if you're a partner and you're not building it within the Operations Manager product. Not easy to build some of the template extensions. So what management packs end up doing is creating all sorts of ways to configure those management packs. Sometimes they're local files on a file system, or different configuration options, different things that are hard to configure. And we're hoping that over time, those can move to templates. So you can essentially import a set of management packs, and those can extend your Ops Manager infrastructure, both from the data collection side, whether it's a module that has to be deployed to an agent, whether it's a template that shows up in the management pack template list, so that you can configure that template on how you monitor that J2E server, or how you monitor SAP, or how you monitor a Cisco UCS device, or how you monitor, you name the next device to come out that is important in the data center. How do we have that extensibility so that you can provide that infrastructure monitoring and all those other pieces that Justin talked about in 360? Sort of a big area where we're trying to really make sure we've got the right extensibility so that you don't have to keep adding infrastructure, right? So you don't have to sort of add more and more products that just sort of integrate at the console, but are really complex for you to manage and importantly, expensive for you to manage and maintain. As we go, the sort of schedule that we're working on a beta for around the Q2 of calendar year 11. This is when you'll get access to the Operations Manager product through the normal Connect sites, the normal things. Hopefully you've had access to the R2 betas and the SP1 betas. That's the same Connect site that we'll be using. Working on a release candidate, sort of just the next quarter, and trying to release for Q4 of calendar 2011. So really, about a year from where we're at now. Hopefully next Tech Ed, assuming it's the same amount of time, we'll be able to be here with much more than just one sensor and an Ops Manager vNext, including hopefully we'll have some great hands-on labs by then. You'll have some experience with the beta, and we'll be able to talk about how to deploy this product, how to migrate from these RMS clustered scenarios, how to migrate from gateways and the other complexities that you have. What do those features look like, and how do you actually put it into place? Some of the things that are still being determined is around outside in. What is that going to look like? What's the experience, and when is that going to be delivered the way that you one day, today you can run these watcher nodes from your on-premise instance of Ops Manager, from your different servers within your environment or agents that communicate to that management group. How do we take that forward so that you can have those watcher nodes running outside in the cloud, running somewhere else, and then feeding data back into your Ops Manager environment so you have that 360 view. You can see that they're working from these environments within your corporation, but they're also working from these external points of presence, which we've heard is pretty important for a lot of customers that have externally facing applications. So you can run these different transactions and pull that data back in, just like you can today from on-premise instances. And then also around Azure monitoring. What are the future pieces there, especially around being able to take some of the Avocode investments that we've made around that deep .NET application monitoring to Azure applications, right? Sort of a natural extension that we're working and thinking around, and we've talked about in some of the initial blogs and some of the initial announcements. That's sort of one of the areas that's still being investigated. Obviously, since we just acquired the company, and trying to figure out what are the best ways and what's the best path to carry that forward, so that as you deploy your Azure applications, or as you migrate or build new applications within Azure, there's no other conversation around what to monitor it with. And this is actually what held back our own MSIT. Our own Microsoft IT, as clearly being one of the biggest dog fooders of all Microsoft software, was getting a lot of pressure put on them to use Azure. Clearly it's the big company bet. If Microsoft IT can't use it, how could we possibly expect our customers to use it? And one of the big things that they pushed back on and had challenges with was, wait a second, we can't deploy apps there. We need to be able to monitor them first. If we can't monitor them from there, we just won't get the data we need, which clearly, unfortunately, put a lot of pressure on our team to deliver a monitoring solution. And that's what we did with this Azure Management Pack, so that we're not the block. So hopefully you can enable your corporations as they're thinking about Azure, as they're working on thinking about Azure, you're right there beside them, helping them understand how to monitor it. Obviously in a different way. There's less infrastructure that you need to worry about. You need to focus more on that end user experience and more on that application response time and the health of that application, so that you could really give the users what they're looking for. So some of those details are still being planned. Definitely we'll share that as we go around Microsoft Management Summit next year, which is in March, really not very far away, and then through beta and release. Any other things to add?
No, it's exciting for me to watch the evolution. When we originally RTM'd Operations Manager, we had the capability to monitor the Wintel platform. We did a really good job with monitoring Exchange, SQL, IIS, directory services. It's nice to see the evolution and continue to see the evolution moving forward. As we went to R2, we had the cross-platform capabilities. As we move on to V4, when we start to look at the end-user experience monitoring, the server has taken, I don't want to say taken a back seat, but certainly the application itself and how that application experiences for our users has certainly become the first-class citizen. And with the cloud enablement, with the Azure monitoring, we're really excited to see this moving forward into the next version.
Great. Well, we've got about 10 minutes for question and answers. It's great to have this session on the Tuesday so that we can sort of have as much as we could share about Ops Manager vNext right now. We've got the rest of the week to hear your feedback, to hear what's important, to hear your scenarios. I'm in the booth tomorrow from about 12 to 5 if you want to stop by. Justin has a session tomorrow at 5:30 on R2, some of the exciting things that we're doing on R2. There's an Avocode session, 6 p.m. on Thursday. I want to thank you for your time and have a great TechEd. Thank you. Thank you.